Every 40 seconds, someone in the United States suffers a heart attack. By the time this video ends, hundreds of people around the world will have experienced one of the deadliest medical emergencies in modern medicine. But here's something most people don't know. A heart attack doesn't begin when the chest pain starts. It doesn't begin when someone suddenly collapses. And it doesn't begin inside an emergency room. It begins much earlier. Sometimes 20 or even 30 years earlier, completely silently, hidden inside a tiny blood vessel, no wider than a drinking straw, no pain, no symptoms, nothing to warn you. And then, one ordinary day, everything changes. Blood suddenly stops flowing. Heart muscle is starved of oxygen. And with every passing minute, millions of heart cells begin to die. Unlike your skin or your liver, the heart has almost no ability to regenerate. Once those cells are gone, they're gone forever. Today, we're going inside the human body to witness exactly what happens during a heart attack. We'll follow the journey from a perfectly healthy artery to a life-threatening blockage and discover why every single minute can mean the difference between life and death. But before we can understand a heart attack, we first need to understand the incredible organ at the center of this story. Your heart is about the size of your fist, yet it performs one of the most demanding jobs in nature. Day after day, year after year, it never stops working. On average, your heart beats around 100,000 times every single day. That's more than 35 million beats every year. And over an average lifetime, nearly 3 billion heartbeats. Without taking a vacation, without sleeping, without resting, every beat pushes blood through an astonishing network of blood vessels, stretching more than 100,000 kilometers. That's enough to wrap around the Earth more than twice. It's one of the greatest biological machines ever created. But here's the irony. Although the heart pumps blood to every organ in your body, cannot feed itself with the blood inside its own chambers. Instead, it depends on something else. A pair of remarkably small arteries, called the coronary arteries. Think of them as the heart's personal fuel lines. Every second, they deliver oxygen, glucose, fatty acids, and every nutrient needed to keep the cardiac muscle alive. If this blood supply stops, even for a few minutes, heart muscle begins to die. That's why these arteries are among the most important blood vessels in your entire body. Under normal conditions, blood flows through them effortlessly. Red blood cells race through the vessels, carrying oxygen to billions of cardiac muscle cells. The circulation is smooth, continuous, almost silent. And as long as this flow continues, your heart keeps beating without you ever thinking about it. But hidden inside every artery, there's an incredibly thin layer of cells, called the endothelium. It's only 1 cell thick, so thin, it's almost impossible to imagine. For many years, scientists believed arteries were simply pipes, carrying blood from one place to another. Today, we know that's completely wrong. The endothelium is actually a living organ, constantly communicates with the blood, the immune system, and the heart itself, controls blood flow, helps regulate blood pressure, prevents unnecessary blood clotting, and keeps the inner surface of the artery remarkably smooth. When this layer is healthy, blood glides through the artery with almost no resistance. But over time, that delicate surface can begin to suffer damage. High blood pressure, smoking, diabetes, obesity, lack of exercise, and especially high levels of LDL cholesterol, often called bad cholesterol. Little by little, year after year, these risk factors place stress on the endothelial cells. Tiny injuries begin to appear, far too small to cause symptoms, far too small to feel, but large enough to change what happens next. Millions of LDL particles travel through your bloodstream every single day. Most continue their journey without causing any problems, but occasionally, one slips beneath the damaged endothelial layer. Then another, and another. Once trapped inside the artery wall, these cholesterol particles begin to change. They become oxidized. To your immune system, oxidized LDL doesn't look harmless anymore. It looks like an enemy. Almost immediately, white blood cells called monocytes leave the bloodstream and enter the arterial wall. There, they transform into macrophages, the body's professional cleanup crew. Their mission seems simple: engulf the cholesterol, remove the threat, protect the artery. At first, everything appears to be under control. But there's a problem. The macrophages can't stop eating. They consume more and more and more oxidized cholesterol until they're completely filled with fat. Under the microscope, these overloaded cells look almost like tiny bubbles. Scientists call them foam cells. And with their appearance, the first stage of atherosclerosis has officially begun. What's remarkable is that this process can begin decades before the first symptom ever appears. Many people carrying these early plaques feel perfectly healthy. They exercise, they work, they laugh, they live completely normal lives, never realizing that deep inside one of their coronary arteries, a silent process has already begun. A process that may continue growing for years or even decades until one day, without warning, everything changes. A tiny plaque will rupture, a blood clot will form, and one of the most extraordinary organs in the human body will suddenly be fighting for its own survival. Part 2. For years, that plaque may remain completely stable. Blood continues flowing. The heart keeps beating. Life goes on. But hidden beneath the surface, something dangerous is happening. The plaque isn't just a collection of cholesterol. It's alive. Immune cells continue releasing inflammatory chemicals. Enzymes slowly weaken the protective fibrous cap that separates the plaque from the bloodstream. Day after day, month after month, year after year, the cap becomes thinner, more fragile, more unstable, until one day, it finally gives way. The rupture itself is incredibly small, far smaller than the tip of a needle. You would never see it with your own eyes. But inside the artery, it changes everything. The body immediately mistakes the rupture for an injury, and your immune system responds exactly as it was designed to. It tries to stop the bleeding. Within seconds, platelets begin rushing toward the damaged area. These tiny blood cells normally protect us from bleeding to death after an injury. Without them, even a small cut could become life-threatening. But inside a coronary artery, their life-saving response can become deadly. The platelets stick to the ruptured plaque. Then, they begin calling for reinforcements. Chemical signals spread rapidly through the bloodstream. More platelets arrive, then even more. At the same time, a complex chain of proteins, known as the coagulation cascade, is activated. Thread-like strands of fibrin begin forming a microscopic net. Red blood cells become trapped inside it. The clot grows, larger and larger. Within just a few minutes, a tiny crack in the plaque has become a solid wall. Blood flow slows dramatically, then it stops completely. The artery is now blocked. Everything beyond the blockage is suddenly cut off from its oxygen supply. And that's the exact moment a heart attack begins. Now, the clock is ticking. Every second matters. Inside the heart muscle, millions of cardiac cells are still alive. But they have a serious problem. Their oxygen supply has disappeared. For a few brief seconds, the cells continue working, using the oxygen that remains inside them. But those reserves are incredibly small. Within seconds, they begin running out. The mitochondria, the tiny power plants inside every cardiac cell, can no longer produce enough ATP. ATP is the molecule that powers virtually every activity inside the cell. Without it, The heart muscle cannot contract normally. To survive, the cells switch to an emergency system, anaerobic metabolism. Unlike normal aerobic metabolism, this pathway produces only a small fraction of the energy, and it comes with a cost. Lactic acid begins to accumulate. The inside of the cells becomes increasingly acidic. Their internal chemistry starts falling apart. Meanwhile, ion pumps embedded in the cell membrane begin to fail. Normally, these microscopic pumps constantly move sodium, potassium, and calcium in and out of the cell. They require ATP every second. Without ATP, they slow down. Then, they stop. Sodium begins accumulating inside the cells. Water follows. The cells start to swell. Calcium levels rise. Electrical activity becomes unstable. The heart, which normally beats with astonishing precision, begins losing its rhythm. Even before the heart muscle starts dying, its electrical system is already under enormous stress. This is why dangerous arrhythmias can develop within the very first minutes of a heart attack. Some of these abnormal rhythms prevent the heart from pumping blood effectively. Others can stop circulation entirely. In fact, one of the leading causes of sudden cardiac death isn't the damage to the heart muscle itself. It's a fatal ventricular arrhythmia triggered by the sudden loss of blood flow. Meanwhile, something else is happening. The starving heart cells begin releasing chemical signals. These substances stimulate nearby sensory nerves. The brain interprets those signals as pain. But unlike pain from a cut or a broken bone, this pain is often difficult to describe. Many people feel intense pressure. Others describe it as if a heavy weight were sitting on their chest. The discomfort may spread to the left arm, the shoulder, the neck, the jaw, or even the back. Some people experience shortness of breath. Others break into a cold sweat. Some feel nauseated. And surprisingly, not everyone feels severe pain. Older adults, people with diabetes, and some women may experience only subtle symptoms: fatigue, mild discomfort, dizziness, or simply an overwhelming feeling that something is terribly wrong. While all of this is happening, the cells deprived of oxygen continue fighting for survival, but they cannot keep fighting forever. If blood flow isn't restored quickly, the damage becomes irreversible. And that's where the real tragedy begins. Because from this moment on, heart muscle doesn't simply stop working. It begins to die. Every minute, without blood flow, more heart muscle dies. Doctors often use a simple phrase to describe this race against time. Time is muscle. The longer the artery remains blocked, the more cardiac muscle is permanently lost. Unlike a broken bone or a cut on your skin, the heart has almost no ability to regenerate. Once these muscle cells die, they're replaced by scar tissue. Scar tissue can hold the heart together, but it cannot contract, cannot pump blood, and it cannot replace what has been lost. If a large portion of the heart is damaged, the consequences can be devastating. The weakened heart may no longer pump enough blood to supply the brain, the kidneys, and the rest of the body. Blood pressure begins to fall. The organs receive less oxygen. This life-threatening condition is known as cardiogenic shock. Without immediate treatment, can quickly become fatal. At the same time, the damaged heart muscle becomes electrically unstable. Instead of producing one coordinated contraction, different regions of the heart begin firing, out of sync. Some arrhythmias cause the heart to beat too fast, others too slowly, and some are so chaotic that the heart simply quivers instead of pumping. This rhythm, called ventricular fibrillation, is one of the most dangerous emergencies in medicine. Without immediate defibrillation, blood circulation stops within seconds. The brain, which depends on a constant supply of oxygen, begins suffering irreversible damage within just a few minutes. This is why recognizing the warning signs of a heart attack can save a life. Chest pressure, pain spreading to the arm, the jaw, or the back, shortness of breath, cold sweat, sudden nausea, or an overwhelming feeling that something isn't right. These symptoms should never be ignored. Calling emergency medical services immediately can make all the difference. While the patient is being transported, every second still matters. Inside the hospital, the medical team has one objective: restore blood flow as fast as possible. Whenever possible, the preferred treatment is a procedure called coronary angioplasty. A thin, flexible tube, known as a catheter, is carefully guided through an artery, usually from the wrist or the groin, all the way to the blocked coronary artery. Watching this procedure is almost like navigating through an intricate highway inside the human body. Once the catheter reaches the blockage, a tiny balloon at its tip is inflated. The balloon compresses the plaque against the artery wall, reopening the passage. But doctors don't stop there. In most cases, they place a tiny metal mesh tube called a stent. The stent expands with the balloon and remains inside the artery, acting like an internal scaffold. Its job is to keep the artery open, allowing blood to flow freely once again. And then, something remarkable happens. Oxygen returns. Nutrients begin reaching the starving heart muscle. The surviving cardiac cells start recovering almost immediately. The pain often begins to fade. The heart becomes more stable, and millions of cells that were only minutes away from dying are saved. It's one of the greatest achievements of modern medicine. But perhaps the most powerful treatment doesn't happen inside the hospital. It happens years earlier, long before the artery becomes blocked, long before chest pain appears, long before the emergency begins. Most heart attacks are the final chapter of a disease that develops silently over many years. The good news is that many of its major risk factors can be reduced, not eliminated completely, but significantly reduced. Regular physical activity helps improve blood vessel function. A balanced diet can lower LDL cholesterol. Not smoking protects the delicate lining of the arteries, keeping blood pressure under control, reduces stress on the cardiovascular system. Managing diabetes helps prevent damage to blood vessels throughout the body. Getting enough sleep, maintaining a healthy body weight, managing chronic stress. All of these habits work together to protect the heart, because prevention doesn't begin inside the hospital. It begins with thousands of small decisions made every single day. Your heart has been beating every second of your life, long before you took your first step, long before you spoke your first word. And while you've been watching this video, it has continued working without asking for a single break. More than 100,000 beats every day, millions every month, billions over a lifetime, quietly, faithfully, keeping you alive. Every heartbeat depends on a constant supply of oxygen. Every coronary artery plays a vital role, and every healthy choice you make today helps protect the incredible machine that never stops working for you. The next time you feel your heartbeat, remember, it's more than just a pulse. It's a reminder that inside your chest, one of the most extraordinary organs in nature is working tirelessly to give you another moment of life. If you enjoyed this journey inside the human body, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Physiology Hub, and join us as we continue exploring the incredible science that keeps us alive. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.